Well, hello and a very warm welcome to this week's newsletter. This is the Security Risk Management Body of Knowledge weekly newsletter number 61. As always, there's so much stuff to go through here. I really don't have time to produce everything. So this is a curated list of the interesting things going on in the world today. So very briefly, last week we introduced the Risk Bowtie ebook, which is free download. This week, a companion to that is the Bowtie Field Kit, which is essentially how to build a bow tie, how to run a workshop, the 12 or so things people get wrong, the common mistakes and errors that people make. And as always, we've got at the moment about 24 free downloads there from all sorts of tools you might want to use. So without further ado, the common theme this week is our geostrategic mess, or at least that's what's caught my attention. So you choose for yourself. However, there's a lot of material here to talk about, which is really quite technical in nature, some quite tactical, some resources and tools you can download. First of all, the shape, size and rise of war in 2026. So Cappy describes himself as the average infantryman. He is anything but average. This is a great overview of the wars in 2025 and how they've shaped our current scenario. It's interesting to see where we've got to, but it's also interesting if you work in that space to help understand what this year is likely to look like, and more particularly what next year is likely to look like. An interesting interview here with Professor Zhang, who predicted the American invasion of Iraq a couple of years ago. So this is an interview on Diary of a CEO. It's probably the most approachable of all his lectures. You can find several lectures, including the original one, online. But this looks at how we came to be, why America had to invade Iran, and why it's going to end badly. Fascinating stuff. As people say, if you're going to forecast frequently. I don't know how right he's going to be, but it's a sobering insight into where we are at the moment. Skim through some of these. The Taliban are losing control of Afghanistan. No surprise there. An insurgent group called the Afghan United Front, AUF, have started to destabilise Afghanistan. And the Taliban are learning the same lesson that the Americans, and before them the Russians, and before them the Brits, and going all the way back to Alexander the Great and the Persians, who discovered that essentially Afghanistan is ungovernable. So I don't wish anybody ill there, but it's certainly a challenging area at the moment. There's a new Middle Eastern Defence Strategic Alliance. It's worth looking at this. It aligns some of their nuclear, conventional, technological capabilities. It's an interesting insight to see how the Middle East perceives their own risks and why they're causing or creating this new alliance. Africa, again, is completely bonkers. I spent several years in Africa. I love it. It's a very difficult place to understand, but what's happening at the moment, we're seeing, for example, some US direct action there where they've been going into Chad and a lot of other areas. It's a sort of advisory role where they're advising bullets downrange into the other party. So it's pretty hands-on stuff. But interesting, we're seeing China engaged with the minerals across there, and politically we're seeing Russia engaged across the Sahel, which is that district between sub-Saharan in the south and the North Africa. It's a complete chaos there, but there's so much focus going on in Africa, and it's worth a look. Interesting alliance with North Korea throwing another 50,000 troops into the meat grinder in Ukraine. This is part of this, what we're seeing in the alliances and the various sort of strategies here. So what we're seeing here, this is a video overview from Cappy Army, a really good insight with good animations explaining what's going on. But essentially we're seeing a forging of alliances, moving from that multipolar world that we had a couple of years ago, and collectively a 1930s style of multipolar world, moving now into a 1938 style of alliances, becoming much harder and faster and becoming a more serious matter for us to deal with. So it's worth a look. Ransomware, they've been targeting critical infrastructure using the most basic sort of vulnerabilities, MFA, remote access, all the sort of things that we have been talking about since 2003 and still aren't done. CISA are basically arguing for a better sector to coordinate OT. particularly the water sector, which is critical. A little bit of humour at the bottom, just to touch on that. You'll see the cartoon for this week is sort of related to this. It's an unfortunate and growing problem, but what's the most interesting thing out of this is that we're seeing people are not looking for ransoms, and they're not coming forward and taking the glory, the blame, whatever you like to call it. So a lot of this is people practicing for ransomware, or more concerningly, pre-positioning for nation-state offences. So something to be aware of. The US has now been engaging private security companies to go up against foreign cybercrime gangs. This is an interesting version, if you like, the modern buccaneering in the days of pirates, where you would become essentially under the flag of the state, you would go and effect various operations. We're seeing this now with a level of governance and guardrails, but it's still pretty concerning. I mean, it's very much in the process of, people are being paid and instructed to interfere in other legal jurisdictions.
What could possibly go wrong?
1,000 charities were basically using a CRM system, and that data was going through what they call this public CDN, a content delivery network, and it's another vulnerability. It's an interesting article for you to consider if you are worried about supply chain. And if you're not worried about supply chain, you're one of the rare people who are perhaps blessed, but I would seriously consider looking at it. So as a logistics company, this is the line item on your risk register that says logistics provider, and this is the classic example of what can go wrong. There's Microsoft delivered 421 CVE patches essentially in a single month, and this is now becoming not just a maintenance task, but this is an entire capacity problem for large organisations. So the Ring doorbells that a lot of us use, that's been breached. That's going to be something to think about too, how this is going to play out. We've finally seen the Snowflake hacker extradited from Canada in 2025, charged and pleading guilty, but this is another example of a Belarusian ransom cartel mastermind, gets 16 years. However, it's 10 years after the fact, so this is not deterrence. We all know deterrence doesn't work, and it's certainly not something you consider in your risk strategy and treatment plan for it. In Australia, Origin Energy was allegedly hacked with about 1 million current and former customer data being breached. Allegedly, it was an Accenture-operated outsourced billing operation with an employee in the Philippines. This is still just an investigation report, but it's going on. So, strategies and tactics. Here's an interesting one for a case in resilience. So, when the Iran war kicked off and the Straits of Hormuz were essentially blocked, or at least a significant toll was put in there were some real concerns about the price of oil going up. Interestingly enough, it would seem that China more or less saved the world from an oil shock in this instance by drawing down their reserves. So you can dig into it. There's a lot to unpack in here, but essentially by switching to coal, using their deliberately opaque reserves, they have essentially been able to almost single-handedly, or certainly significant player in stopping the price of oil spiking and becoming a true disaster. Now, there's a few more here. I won't go into all of these. These are essentially a series of reports on threat hunting and what have you. They're talking about different strategies. We're seeing increasingly the different strategies evolving. They're altering. They're not being as easy to detect in the past. I won't go into these now. Have a read. One of the interesting things is that a group of academics managed to attack a Boeing 737 with a device about this big to get remote access to the aircraft data buses. Not the sort of thing that could cause a catastrophic failure, but could interfere with the control information. So altering the cabin pressure, the air pressure, talking about the temperature, adjusting what the aircraft thinks its weight is, its balance. So it can be quite significant in the wrong hands. Vulnerabilities found in commercial refrigeration controllers, again.
What could possibly go wrong?
A federal agency employed a North Korean IT worker. It's not the first time this has happened, and it won't be the last. However, we're seeing more and more of this, and it's a really significant vulnerability for the everybody, essentially, who outsources IT. We're seeing increase in industrial ransomware attacks, mostly manufacturing, and that's because downtime's expensive in negotiating. Paying the ransom is quicker, easier, cheaper than having to restore everything and have downtime. Quickly, in tools and resources, ISO 31000 third edition is about to be updated. So it was 2009, current version is 2018. They're still working through the final draft of that, so it may be a bit delayed, but just be advised that it's coming together and you may be able to access a standard to start working with that if you want to. This is the Bowtie field kit that I mentioned earlier, where you can download it. NIST have Rev 3 Guide to Operational Technology Security. It's a great technical document. If you're looking for something that is sort of sole source, single authoritative, these are the SP200 800.82 Rev 3. The CSF2 Quick Start Guides are fantastic, and there's a couple of others there which you may also want to get into. Again, all of these, they're worth downloading and keeping because it's your business case. These are the data points where you can use to argue why you need product X, staff X, whatever it might be in addition. There's also ISAC advisory, so this is really around OT, operational technology. It's a TLP clear version. If you don't know what TLP clear is, you can Google it or click that link, it'll take you to it. So essentially it's a open source classification device. Much more, I'm not going to go into these kind of details too much. Again, more CISO open security, Cloudflare 2026 threat report. Again, great stuff for your business case, depending on what you do. Now, attacks 4 times faster, that's the headline from that. And we're seeing some open source software reports now. This one's actually pretty darn good, even though they're a vendor. If you see a lot of templates come out, there one or two people have actually helped with some of those templates there. If you've got a template you'd like to share, publish it for free or publish it and name your price. The details are there. 80% of it goes to you, the individual, at least for the individual sales. Normal accidents, this is a foundational text. It's an oldie but a goodie, so I've included that there. This week I'm making my book Tactical Risk Management free. It's essentially the practical details of how to do risk at a really just functional day-to-day level. Crossing the street, organising a function, doing some sort of a basic movement with staff, even down to how to do something simple like install a whiteboard. So some quick links. We're seeing increasing Russian hybrid warfare activities in Europe. Expectation that it will escalate in 2026. No surprise there for most of us, but you've got a bit of evidence there if you need it. We're looking at weaponised connectivity. 2 undersea cables were cut in Perth and Western Australia recently. Whether these sort of things are testing or not, we don't know, but they are certainly a vulnerability. We've got a little bit of a vignette on insider threats, so situational predictors. If you work in insider threat, this is a gold mine for you, highly recommended. So malicious insider threats, it's the fraud triangle, pressure, opportunity, rationalisation, pretty handy. Cyber threats to critical infrastructure are going to be one of the main games. So this is part of modern warfare. Critical infrastructure has always been part of warfare, but now we're seeing it from a cyber approach, as I said, with people pre-positioning. AI agent governance gap, so it's worth looking at, especially for CISOs. We're looking at how threat actors are tailoring their tactic to their target. This is what a lot of the news is about in this newsletter. Escalating cyber risk, some of the worst breaches of 2026 so far. We've got 46 ransomware statistics and trends report. So this report is basically giving you, again, examples of where you might need to think of. This is a foundational sort of an item really for some of your business cases, your risk assessments when you're looking at threat and context. these are the type of things that you need to be looking at. So I'll leave that there for you. That's a useful resource to download into your library, or just keep the newsletter and come back to it each time you need it. Right, so hot jobs. There's a few jobs, CISO, US federal government, a series of security management roles in Middle East, Australia, a bit of a collection there, some NGO roles, mining and security and production roles in Africa, my favourite option. So there's a whole range really of where you can find advertised jobs. Some upcoming events, Australia, Atlanta, online, Las Vegas, London, and so forth. And on a lighter note, a couple of quiet jokes, and then there's this dark humour to set off some of the not so good stuff in there. Again, if you like the jokes in here, you can find them all in the SRMBOK Guide to Human Factors, sort of human factors in the light-hearted sense of human factors. Anyway, thank you. That's it for this week. Hope you enjoy it and you find the templates useful. Thanks very much. Bye.